This week's episode is brought to you by Paradog. Try their LB and limited release fresh up beers this month for the tastiest drops straight off the vine. Nice.
Welcome back to the Design Principles podcast. Today's episode we're chatting about craft, exploring the importance of craftsmanship, how it informs thoughtful design principles, and its role in creating meaningful spaces in our built environment. Joining us for this conversation is Raimana Jones from Atelier Jones Design. Raimana shares valuable insights and personal experiences drawn from years of exploring, playing, and refining his design processes. So we hope you enjoy this conversation with Mana, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.
I guess the basis of this chat was you know for those who listened to in the last episode anyway, you know that I'm traveling around Europe at the moment, getting to see some amazing architecture, and it's pretty easy to see like a lot of those old school architects like Aalto and Walter Gropius and Le Corbusier, or any of those guys. They've all kind of got this thing where they've like extend their architecture to not only just the design of a building, but the craft of lighting or lighting design or furniture design, which is kind of similar to you, I guess, Gerard. And so, yeah, just really wanted to talk about how that craft can kind of cross a lot of different media and how that can kind of help to, to shape that design process or refine that design process and be useful within that architecture realm as well. That was kind of the thoughts behind the chat today.
Yeah, you, Raimana, obviously jumped into my mind pretty quickly as somebody who's very involved in the fabrication making side. So I imagine the feedback loop within your own work, that's pretty heavy from making to designing, making to designing.
Yeah, like how to integrate craft more into architectural projects and interior design schemes. Like how can you design at the level of a door handle or a light fixture, for example.
And then just like even like a little bit before that, like craft itself and how important that is, and are we still crafting, I guess, in a way that we used to craft, if that even makes sense.
And if
what
not,
is craft?
And if not, or if we are, what impact is that having on like the built design product, everything kind of world, that tangible interaction, is that being lost, and is therefore like all the stuff around us, is that being affected? I guess it's, these are pretty big questions, but
yeah, it's a pretty big topic, but I think there's a lot of...
For me, it's probably not the answer people want to hear, but it really depends on the budget. Like if the budget allows to go down towards those fine detail, designing those detailed and crafted elements, I think it comes down to that. And also back then, Alvar, Aalto's era, I think, and also the country, it's in the culture that is a craft culture, is way more artisanal businesses that are passed on from generation to generation.
It's interesting you say that. Lisa, in our episode with her, very briefly touched on it, but it kind of resonated with me, and I think with a few other people as well. She was sort of saying how she was chatting with a friend who was brought up in Portugal, and they were taught design appreciation at school, or art appreciation at school. And I think like that interaction with, let's just call them beautiful things, isn't necessarily taught as much specifically in New Zealand as it maybe is internationally. And maybe that's where like the people seeking craft or well-crafted things, maybe it's a little less here.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It also reminds me of, I used to take woodworking classes from this older guy. He looked like he was in his 80s, and he was trained. Well, he's one of the old school woodworker, and he trained with I can't remember the name of he's a well-known woodworker in New Zealand, and he's one of the founders of the Nelson School of Woodworking. So he trained with that guy, and he was telling me exactly that he told me specifically in England, women are used to be trained to appreciate well-crafted things. So I think there's also that.
Yeah, I think in architecture school, when we were going through, we were probably on like the tail end of the last remaining slither of probably workshop culture. I think just after we left, they started removing the metalwork room and downsizing and fitting in more robots and 3D printers. There wasn't a huge push for it, but there was the space for it. And I taught for a semester, and we're talking about this today with some ex-Massey woodwork who's running the part of the woodwork workshop, and just how no students are really pushed into that space anymore, like unless like you absolutely have to. It's not really part of the design process. I tried to push people into the workshop. I made them do a workshop day, a sewing day, like I brought clay in another day. And I think just trying to introduce people to different materials, I think people respond to different materials, like, or find one that you really relate to and become a potter, who knows? But I think just play, just lowering the threshold. You don't have to go out and be a master potter on the first day. I think just reintroducing play into things, and just the act of making is, I think, pretty beneficial to design.
Do you think, Gerard, that you mentioned of play and you're not going to become a master potter on the first day? Do you think the like shifting maybe level of patience or attention span of like the moving generations, if we go back, like we were just talking about Alvar, Aalto, you know, these older generations, they had more time seemingly in their day-to-day life. Maybe not, maybe we're just being naive. Versus the modern day TikTok generation. You even think about people going through architecture school now, younger than us, like they want results now, right? So do you think that shift to the more robotic, the less playful, kind of like I want a final solution and I want it now type mentality has resulted in that change in focus of the schools and of the education? Or do you think that was going to happen regardless?
It's certainly a compelling argument. I don't know, you design on a computer and you want to see it immediately, like rather than like I'm in my work anyway, I'm big about just like discovery, so trying not to draw too much. So while you're making, you're kind of designing at the same time, so you can stumble into things or let process drive you a little bit. Raimana, how do you find you're designing some of your like furniture pieces? Is that like, do you work purely sketching first before you start making, or is there zigzag?
mainly sketching. There'll be sketching, like a lot of different iterations.
Yeah.
Then modeling, and then making and prototyping. And then
Digital modeling?
Digital modeling.
Not fashion modeling?
The fashion. I'll just make a dress and do a little runway. I will model it, then I would prototype things in the workshop, and then I'll go back to sketching, then modeling and refine it. It'll be that tech. Yeah, that'll be the usual process.
Do you find that the process for sort of designing a space is your process for designing a space is kind of similar to designing like a piece of furniture, for example, or do you use the same sort of kind of methodology, or is there any overlap there or anything?
That's a good question. They're different and similar. So one similar thing that I like to do personally is I like to draw on isometric. I like to do isometric drawings. So I would create a base on whether it's furniture or a space. So in the case of, well, let's take furniture, for example, a stool, I would model the stool roughly, like just a footprint, say as a extruded box. And then I would sketch over it just to get the proportions right. Then for a space, say it's a kitchen, I'll just get the volume of the kitchen. I'll cut out 2 walls so I can see through. And then I would model the base cabinet. You know how, kitchens 600 deep, 900 high. So I would model those, and then I would draw over it. So it's similar in that way, but it's different in scope, because I'd like to think when you design a space, there's way more to design, really.
I saw you've got some of those drawings on your website. I thought they were really, really, I guess like had a lot of information in them. So I can see how it'd be such a useful design tool for you.
Yeah, the one on your design services where
Yeah.
like there's like everything in there, plates,
Yeah, it's great.
little baskets, apron.
Oh, cheers.
It's an epic drawing.
Yeah, I think the key with drawing, for me, it's to be loose, to kind of not be precious about it, especially at the concept stage. To really, really be explorative. It's okay if your lines are not going to be straight. So I think it's important to build layers upon layers upon layers, and not be afraid to just draw.
It's that concept of play again, right?
Yes, exactly.
Where does that sketch first or that draw first mentality for you come from? I look at a lot of my peers or our peers, and particularly younger people coming through, like they're quite afraid of putting pen to paper. And a lot of the time, I think it is maybe not necessarily a fear, but it's like you want the drawing to look perfect or look right or work, and so you kind of have that fear of the line not being in the right place or what have you. But you learn so much from that play process. Where does that kind of draw first mentality for you come from?
I think it's just a habit I took. Yeah, it came from when I was a little kid. I always liked to draw, and it goes back to play. I think that was for me being playful. It was just drawing, and and I always stuck to drawing through high school, through uni, and that isometric process that I described. I did that, throughout all my uni years. So it's just a habit.
I like that you've built your style of design approach. What about you, Gerard and Ben? What do you guys do first? What's your kind of like go-to get your head in the game type starting point?
There might be like a thumbnail, but beyond that, for the furniture side of things, object side of things, for me it's kind of more sort of like I don't know, I'm real into process and like letting process kind of have a part in guiding your design strategy a little bit. Much the same with the piccolo, like the little house in Coromandel. That was the exercise to do that, was to try and build a house as if you were making a pot or something. So you don't draw, or you try to draw nothing, and then you kind of let yourself make decisions as you go along. So that one had a thumbnail like that big. Maybe I got lucky with that one. There's a table I'm building at the moment, which is actually out of sort of scraps as well. The piccolo was made out of an old shed and whatever scraps I could find laying around.
Can I ask a question? What's the reason you called it piccolo? Is it after the coffee?
Yeah. There's There was a cafe down in town. My morning ritual was cruising down to the cafe for a piccolo, and then I'd go get to work. So it was naturally, and then it was like a small cute building, like a small, cute coffee. Yeah, I just like that exploration in design.
But you're
That's the one
explorative.
that's the one with the curve.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that house.
little target.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Gerard, your explorative process is very tactile, like very real as well, very built. I guess this kind of like leans back into the craft side of things. Like it's rare that we get to kind of the piccolo is the exception. It's rare we get to do that with architecture just due to the scale.
It's a terrible process for architecture. When
Make it up as they go along.
Yeah. Can I come and build a house at your house, but I'm not going to design anything, and we're just going to start? Like, you have a laugh.
Yeah.
Because it's so little and I did it for free, you get a few more liberties.
But at the same time, like because you're hands on, you're working it out in the process or everything. Like it's so incredibly well thought out. Like I find with design, if you do it like through the traditional means or traditional ways, because you're kind of like taking something from one medium to another medium, you lose nuance or you lose kind of moment or intent. It's quite hard maybe to capture that. Something that you draw, it's hard to then replicate in real life and vice versa. Whereas if you're kind of like working in the medium that you are then going to end up building in, I find that to be a lot easier. We've talked about this before. I do a lot of model making as my initial stages. Basically, it's just like card and paper models. Bit of wood maybe from time to time, but just small, formal explorations. And I think through that you can understand shape and shadow and context and stuff a lot easier than you can even drawing on a piece of paper. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I guess like, I'm still trying to figure it out. Obviously, did my building apprenticeship, and when I was with makers, we had like a big factory, and so craft was a lot easier, or playing was a lot easier. Did a lot with like timber and that sort of thing then. But now I feel like I kind of lost that a little bit, and I'm designing a little bit too much in the digital realm. I know what I want, but I've got no other kind of media to be able to draw it out a little bit further. It's not that I don't have any other media, it's just I haven't kind of tested other options. And so like coming over here, and I sat and went to Aalto's studio and sat in the seat that he used to draw on, which was really awesome. It's like 800 mils off the ground. And so it's like this big white table, and he's a strong believer that, a white table is what you want to be able to put your sheets down and not get distracted, or, get the best out of it. Then it's low, so you can kind of like crouch over it, and there's a total immersion.
What's the material?
The table?
Yeah.
Was just a timber table, or like a classic kind of Aalto table with, folded.
Like a melamine, like a laminate.
Yeah, like a melamine. Yeah.
I presume so. It was kind of hard to tell exactly what the top is, but it was very flat, so I presume it's something simple like that. Which I'm like, man, that's such a cool idea, just laying out big sheets of paper and really just going for it. And then there's just big drawings, sketches of his. And then you can kind of see his chain of thought is just shifting constantly between like design, architecture, furniture design, how it all kind of molds together. And it's just crossed over between his lighting kind of becomes part of the architecture, and then so does the furniture, and it all becomes one piece of well-designed environment. So it wasn't just like I'm designing the architecture, it's like I'm just designing the space that you are there to enjoy, and then it all comes together collectively. I'm super inspired by that sort of thing, and I've got all these plans to go home and sort of work on those additional craft skills a little bit more. And I don't know how that is going to pan out for me at the moment, but I guess you just got to start somewhere. And I know I have like the woodworking side already, but I'd like something a little bit faster, I guess. Something that you, Gerard, you're really good at just doing quick turnarounds. Test something, see how it goes, like next iteration. So yeah, that's something that I'm really going to work on over the next coming months, I think.
Yeah, like what other? I mean, that's exactly what we're kind of like trying to work out. Being like, what else? What not non-architectural or maybe even like non-design crafts or activities? Like, do you guys do anything else that sort of like sharpens that design eye or that skill, or your understanding of proportion, texture, flavor, whatever? For me, I'd say that like my creative outlet is cooking.
Yeah.
And okay, that has absolutely no bearing on the architecture that I do, really, but it gives you kind of an understanding on maybe like how elements go together, or the idea of crafting a plate or something like that. It's all design at the end of the day. Like, what else do you guys employ to sharpen those skills that aren't necessarily work focused?
Yeah, I think I've seen like a lot of people start to test a whole bunch of things, or maybe it's just I've been observing it more recently. But I think it can really be anything from like, trying to do your own art, to pottery, to even like the model making, like you were talking about, to what Gerard does, the actual furniture or lighting design, or I think it's just like anything that has a design, an iterative design process that makes you like think in a certain way that is like trying to draw out what you're actually trying to portray or trying to. Yeah, I think like it's about getting like that stuff out there. I don't know how to explain it.
Like if you were, say, you're going to a pottery class and they say make a plate, you're saying you have a rough idea on how to make the plate, but it's through the process and through
Yes,
making the plate that gets you there. And you're
exactly.
like,
And
oh my God.
figuring out, taking that from like a concept, something that you think you can do, to actually being able to get it the way you want it, I guess.
I reckon
Yeah,
it's a
I
confidence
get
game.
it.
I've had a couple welding courses where a woman who welding courses, which it's pretty epic to see old Sarah Bookman at the moment getting to the point where she's comfortable in the workshop and can start to really like loosely design. It's like seeing a sketch, and I think that's the sweet spot for me anyway in a workshop where you can actually play. Like you've got the basic tools, you can know how to do a weld, and you know how to chop things. I think that for me is like 3-dimensional sketching. It is the 3D printer and computer all in one.
So
Yeah,
you
definitely.
sketch with the welder.
Yeah, I mean you'll have a bit of steel. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the process. I reckon that's the sweet spot for me.
I think another a part of it is wanting to create something. I guess this must be an influence from Gerard, but wanting to create something a little bit more original. It's hard because it's overwhelmingly feels like everything's already been done, because it doesn't even matter if it has been done or not. Like coming to those set of conclusions yourself throughout that design process, that's what that iterative process is all about.
Yeah, Raimana, you've designed 100 million chairs and tables. It doesn't really get old, does it? Or are you sick?
To be honest, I'd really like to do. Your process sounds way cooler, Gerard. Like how you sketch with materials. I'm like, damn, I wish it only happened once. And that was during the lockdown.
Nice.
I don't know if there's a collection called the Bricolo collection.
Is that the little galvanized?
That's the one, yeah.
Little stool.
And it's all.
And it's got trussel.
Steel and there's the materials. Yeah, it's all steel, but it's just flat bars, steel sheets, and steel rods.
Yeah, that's a
limited,
really beautiful little stool. I love that one.
Thanks, man. And it was because during the lockdown, I didn't have access to getting materials, and I was a bit bored. So I was like, oh, what can I do? And And that was when I started to sketch with the materials I had on hand. And as a result, like iteration by initially some of the joints where the flat bars are were timber, as I wanted to use the friction of the timber that holds the steel rods together to make the trestles, because it's a trestle profile that's applied to the whole collection. And that didn't really work out. So then I went with, let's just do it out of all steel. And that's how it came out. So I'd love to keep exploring that, like sketching with materials, but I'm not used to it. I think it's a bit daunting. Whereas for you, Gerard, it sounds like it's natural for you when you talk about it.
It's hard not to want to have like a fully refined plan in front of you before you hit that workshop floor and then perfectly fold
Exactly.
everything. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to get away from that chain of thought, isn't it?
That's that fear of failing again, though.
Yeah,
fear of failing, it's very counterintuitive, especially from architecture. It's like you have to plan before
first.
you execute.
Yeah. Because how would that work for building a house? I guess it'd be similar to what you did with the bungalow, where you just you start with some framing and you stand that up and then you find something else. It
would be a nightmare.
Organically. Yeah, the council.
Just tell the clients, it's
it's gonna be fun. Don't worry about it.
It's getting good.
Trust me, guys.
Internally, NZ Rab would strike me off the list real quick.
Oh, you'd be gone.
Just your whole work starts with a variation, and it's just that's it. It's a variation house, and you've got to document it as you go along. So you start with building it, and then you document it, get that processed, and then continue. It's possible.
Okay, it doesn't apply that well to architecture, but I think having this architectural adjacent ability to craft or to design or to look at things and be tactile with materiality, it's ultimately going to make what you do as a profession, whether that be furniture, whether that be architecture, whether that be design of something else, is going to make it so much more profound and insightful, and the nuance is going to be a lot better, mainly because you've gone through, or at least you understand that try, fail, play, that tactile nature of designing, rather than being I've got to be perfect from day one and this thing's going to be basically a robot house, to being something that has so much emotion involved and, embedded in it,
Yeah. Do you guys feel quite constrained about the materials that are out there, or are you still kind of excited about discovering different uses for various materials?
I think what I found for off-the-shelf materials, like tiling for splashback in the kitchen, I find those to be a little bit more limiting in comparison to where you are, Ben. The selection must be amazing. Or even in Australia, there's way more tiles to select from. So off-the-shelf materials, I feel it's quite limiting. But when it comes to bespoke cabinetry, I think there's still, for me personally, I always try to, invent a new cabinetry typology for each project and test new details within those cabinets.
I think that's cool. And Gerard, obviously, you've found 1,000 ways to use a bit of steel. So you're obviously still having a lot of fun, designing with the materials that you're using, which is great. Sometimes I feel, I wouldn't say bored, but always having to try and think of new and exciting ways to use materials out there, especially for, in the architecture side of things, where it's really hard to come up with something that's somewhat creative without it looking like 1,000 other buildings or something like that. But the organic stuff that you do, Gerard, for example, is still very unique, and probably because of its organic nature.
On the note of tiles, Aalto, what's that big public building he did near the end of his career? ginormous sort of set of
The
buildings.
one in Helsinki at the theatre there, because he's got his own tiles. He invented the semi-curved tiles. That's so cool, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, like still being creative, designing it down a bit.
Yeah, I feel now most people, designers, for obvious reasons of finances, most likely, stick to specified products, whereas architects back in the day were a lot more willing to design a whole new tile, or we're going to design everything. Yeah, and I just think like bringing that mind frame back as a possibility is like will open a lot of doors, I think.
That's a great point of view. That's good.
Is this restricted by Raimana's first comment? You know, at the start of the pod, where it's like it's budget constraint. Are people less willing to experiment or to pay for that experimentation within a project?
That's the whole conversation, right? The craft conversation. Like, what is the level of craft? Is it a budget thing that's diluting the level of craft? If we had more budget, obviously the level of craft would be better. Or is the level of craft, even with a low budget, good? Like, that's the question.
You just take matters into your own hands, don't you, Raimana? That's the ultimate solution.
You guys are the best proponents of that. Do it yourself.
Yeah. Get it done, then it's done.
I mean, I think with a tight budget, sure, you can maybe do the handles that are customized. And say they could be turned wooden handles, because those wouldn't be too expensive because often cupboard handles, you need 20 of them. So it's worth to do a batch with a CNC lathe. And there's a few manufacturers out there in Auckland anyways that do have that. So depending is... I'm kind of contradicting myself. I think for all the elements, if we take kitchen, for example, if we want all the elements of the kitchen to be bespoke, including the cabinets, then yes, if you want the craft to be spread throughout the whole room, then yes, it comes down to budget. I do want to say it's a certain budget tier where all the elements can be truly bespoke. And then there's another tier, and this is from my experience, another tier where you could do a hybrid of customized, crafted elements, like the handles, with off-the-shelf like cabinets, for example. So I think there is space for a little bit of craft in that last example.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think you can get good craftsmanship even though you're kind of repeating. I don't think it needs to be bespoke to be of that like level of craft. Like, for example, manufacturing a light, you're not going to just do a one-off. It's still going to be like well-crafted light, even though it's kind of mass-produced slightly. I'm just trying to understand what good craftsmanship would look like in architecture. It's easy to say like it's well-crafted bit of furniture or light or this or that. Like, what is a well-crafted architecture? Is it just like good build quality, or is it well designed and well built, or is it fully bespoke, for example? You know what I mean?
I think it's more an understanding of the material that you're working with, or the materials that you're working with. I mean, I think that's the essence of craftsmanship, is like intimate knowledge of your medium.
Yeah.
And that to me is like good architecture or like really good crafted architecture is that. If we look at it on a mass scale, for instance, let's take Te Reo Ando, an intimate emotional connection to concrete. Can craft a building out of concrete better than anyone.
Yeah, nice.
And he's a master craftsman at that material.
The opposite to what I was saying before about getting bored with materials, we should be going in the opposite direction. It's like really like narrowing down on one material and like maximizing it to its fullest.
It's not necessarily one, but it could be be a collection of many, like, you know, like Raimana's talking about, like, you know, a kitchen, the bespoke elements that you could have, the tiles, the handles, that's many elements, but it's having that deep understanding, emotional connection to that material, rather than just being like, oh, I picked this cladding because the clients liked it. I picked this because it's off the shelf, or whatever, you know, like which we're so guilty of in architecture, just cherry picking stuff because it's there, rather than being like, I've made this decision because there's actual reason behind it, and this is how it's like developed, and that's where that like tactility and that craftsmanship comes into architecture. I think is the knowledge of what you're using to build that thing.
Definitely. I think that's just not taught at architecture school. Like, you're not taught to learn and understand a material working with hardwood versus a plywood, or your limitations of a material, like what you can do with it. Because once you kind of understand it, then you can kind of, in the ideal world, push it as far as you can. And I think a lot of architecture is, Joseph Rasmus Prince from Rex Architects said in a lecture once that we're just cake decorators. So you build a structure and then you like clad it with a color or a material, you know. And I think that's often the way people do like a kitchen or something. But I think something that sets your kitchens apart, Raimana, is a clear understanding of material, and you're getting like far more creative outcomes because like the structure is dependent on the material. You're not decorating cakes.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I do like to use materials for their practical purpose, not just for decoration. Yeah, exactly.
The two sort of meet together in a pretty nice junction. Like I think your kitchens particularly are like really pretty in the use of steel, use of steel and tension, or like how thin some of your kitchen frames are. For example, the one behind you, even like how like thin some of your structural frames get. Like I think like creates like a real pretty kitchen.
And that comes from that understanding, right? Like you inherently know your material, you know that it can achieve what you're wanting it to do, rather than having, you know, an engineer or, you know, a product rep or somebody being like, oh, it has to be this big because that's just the way that everybody else does it.
Or you come back 6 months later and your shelves are bowing.
They're all sagged, yeah, but you know through trial and error and play that's going to be the case. And I think that's where truly successful outcomes, you know, are resultant from.
Yeah. I'm just a big advocate for people learning material.
Yeah, there's a quote I want to share from James Dyson, the guy who invented not
vacuum cleaners.
Not the vacuum cleaner guy.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah, he is a really good story. He said that the visceral experience of making things by hand is a wise teacher. So in his company, in the UK, all the engineers, he pushes them to make all the prototyping themselves. They're not just like on the computer drawing. They understand the materials.
See, that's interesting, and just kind of been thinking about your point, Gerard, that you said we were never taught at architecture school how to understand materials. And then, Raimana, you've talked about these people learning or understanding materials, or at least the design process in a work environment. I mean, we've all worked in architectural practice and neither still are or doing other things now. But like, did you ever get that opportunity? I've never really had that opportunity to truly understand material within practice. Have you, or have you gone and sought that elsewhere because that opportunity hasn't been afforded to you?
For me?
Yeah, well, yeah, for everyone really. Like, specifically you and Gerard, I think, given that you're probably the more inherent understanding of the materials that you work with, other than besides Ben and I.
None of Ben's buildings have fallen down, so
well, yeah.
Ben's pretty educated.
Well, Ben, you're saying you know about woodworking, right?
Yes, I've done a lot of that. Kind of like weirdly left it in my tracks over the last couple of years. I need to bring it back. I had like ambitions for a while there to like everything I do out of like raw kind of material structures and kind of more of like post and beam designs and that sort of thing. And my current designs of just like my house. I built a house really similar to that, and then I've lost it over the last few years, and I've been meaning to bring it back and understand what happened, why I kind of went away from it.
Yeah,
I
you've
guess.
lost it?
Well, I just haven't been designing like that. I've kind of been put into like more of like forced to learn digital development realm, and I have lost
Okay.
that kind of that bespoke kind of stuff that I need to work on, I think.
Bring it back.
But yeah, like that university
Bring it
stuff.
back.
Bring it
I
back.
think like
Bring it back.
Bring it back.
oh, bring it back. The craft, yeah, bring craft back. Yeah. And going back to that university stuff, though, Gerard, I think that it's not really up to them. I think you've learned what you have through your own kind of initiative, and you've just been like grinding away, doing your own apprenticeship
Literally.
within your own backyard. That's how you've got to where you are, your current understanding. And I'm sure it's probably the same with you, Raimana. So I think a lot of it is just like taking it upon yourself to pull out what you think, what your kind of like passion, or it's like a semi-hobby to like experiment and play. It comes back to that play, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of this does come down to access to facilities. The more facilities, maybe the more play. I'm pretty aware of that.
Yeah, if every architecture firm could have a adjacent workshop like Strong Group or something, would be fantastic.
Well, you just need one per every 4 firms, right? You just need to like have your workshop in the middle, and then have like 2, 3, or 4 firms around it, and it's just a shared space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of community workshops around. Like the shed has now changed to a different owner, but it's still a community workshop. I think that the name is about to change. I don't know what about in Wellington? Are there?
I just know we've got like a local shed, but other than that, there are community workshops, but I don't necessarily think they are necessarily woodworking or metalworking or crafting workshops. Gerard, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of community art spaces, but equally, I think that's just as relevant. We're kind of talking more tangible material, not necessarily tangible materials, but more like solid materials, but like pottery or even painting or anything. Like all of these art forms have the same impact and influence on your design and in the creative realm as as this crafting that we're talking about, which is a little bit more sculptural, I guess.
do you have your own facilities, Raimana?
I do. I'm really, really lucky. So the house we rent has which Jars has seen it as fairly large basement that's been renovated.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's all been slabbed and converted that into a woodworking and metal workshop. I'm happy with, I love that space, but it gets filled really quickly.
Imagine. And so you just been
You always
focusing
fill the
your-
space you're given a
Yeah, it adds up so quickly. It's
hoarding
crazy.
mentalities.
And
You're like,
and the
oh,
thing
that's
is,
helpful.
you're like, yeah, exactly. You're like, ah, damn it. Yeah, it's. We're gonna use that someday.
Oh, that's long enough.
Genius from his landlord, though,
I'll use
because the task of moving is just so daunting. They're never going to go anywhere, So I'm never moving out. But it's pretty good, though. You've been doing a pretty good job of collecting various tools as well, Gerard? You've got some pretty useful stuff in there now.
Yeah, just got a paddle saw.
Nice.
And a planer. I'm gonna try to do some timber things. I was thinking, could you hydroform timber? That's the next thought process.
You could probably hydroform bamboo. It's like got the same kind of like tensile strength as steel.
Well, the theory is based on like if you leave water, like your timber out in the rain, it's going to warp to shit.
Yeah.
Maybe if you just fill it up with water, I don't know, glue a timber box together, thin plywood or something, and then or even just have a sheet of ply outside with a bunch of water on it for a week. I wonder if it would deform into that sort of hydroform pillows.
It's then
It's worth testing.
stabilizing it though. But yeah, it's worth testing. Exactly. Get out
Yeah,
there.
for your mom's kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a bench top, it's perfect.
Right.
That'd be a real good
That's
bench top,
really
eh?
cool, but like, honestly, Gerard, it's a real pain in the ass. Every time I put a carrot on one end, it ends up in the middle.
Yeah, my plate keeps falling off.
Yeah, I just have a bunch of fruits in the middle.
Genius. We're coming up with a good big ideas today.
Yeah, it's like a big fruit bowl. It's like a bench top and a fruit bowl.
Yeah, your whole dining table is like a bowl. Everyone's food just ends up in the middle, like a big paella.
Yeah, that,
I was thinking more like a pig slop bin.
Yeah. That's your next table idea, Raimana.
yeah. I'm stealing that idea. It's actually not too bad. Yeah, a fruit bowl and actually I quite like that idea.
Is it a table? Is it a fruit bowl?
Yeah, like a really nice subtle curve. I can see that.
Yeah, I'm always influenced by, or big fan of, is it Mumbai Studio, who like have a workshop at their studio, and they would do one-to-one mock-ups of like the I think often they do like the section of the building, or like so you could kind of get the eave sort of feeling. I love the idea of an architecture firm combined with a workshop, like what maybe Renzo Piano Building Workshop, maybe what that was like at the very start, or like Dan Holtrop's workshop where he just pours concrete into dirt and then lifts it up and looks at his fun textured panels. A place of play or like material experimentation.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I'm gonna go out there and do it.
Do it.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. What's the reason for that trip, Ben? Is it to get it inspired?
Yeah, just to have a look at some good architecture. I haven't been to these Scandinavian countries before, so we've been traveling around Denmark and Sweden, and then Finland, and now in Germany, and then Paris tomorrow. So just, haven't been to them and just wanted to experience that design culture, pick up some lights on the way, which I actually had a successful flea market win of like some amazing lights. And there's just like, you go to the flea market, there's like Louis Paulson stuff here and there, and you just, I don't know, it's like a different quality. And all of the apartments are just so well crafted, they're stunning. So it's that, and then the other side was just like really a better understanding of that medium density realm where it's starting to become a thing in our country, but it's been a thing for hundreds of years over here. They're so well densified. Densilated. That could be a word.
The old densilation.
Lad.
Densilated. Yeah,
we'll edit that out.
That is staying at 100%.
So well densilated that, there's just so many good examples of amazing dense but well designed spaces that I just wanted to experience. Pretty much. Absolutely worth my time for sure. My partner is an architect as well, so we have the same interests, which makes it easier. Aalto's workshop was actually one of the highlights. It's just so well designed, and it's so interesting because he was like a big fan of Italy, which we've spent a lot of time in Italy, and he had like this design style, but then he went to Italy on his honeymoon, and he came back and he basically completely changed his design style about how things are kind of merged together a little bit more organically on his buildings. And you kind of see like that his early designs versus like that, experiencing the space and then coming a little bit, coming away with a complete different sense of architecture, I guess. So
Looking forward to seeing
that's
your
kind of like
I'm looking forward to seeing
What's
your
that?
design evolution post this trip now, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, it can't hurt, right? Hey, it's just like doing an iterative process. You're actually experiencing these spaces are the same as experiencing those different creative designs or whatever. So I think it's been pretty insightful for sure.
Yeah. What so his workshop, where was that?
So it's in Helsinki, and it's so cool. From the outside, it's never really much to look at, but it's so well designed around like stuff he'd taken from, for example, Italy or some of his travels. He's got like an amphitheater courtyard where people can go and have lunch and kind of look out or do their presentations outside, kind of all sit around a semicircle. And then just the use of natural light. So they've got like pop-out windows everywhere where the drawing boards used to be. And so they have their pin-ups on these like special walls that the light is reflecting directly onto. And yeah, it's just amazing, really. And all their spaces are very large. Everyone has like a good kind of workshop area essentially to work in, as opposed to just like a 1 meter desk with a computer. There's so much more hands-on.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, so by workshop, it's a studio where they work with materials.
Exactly. Yeah. So each person has like a 20 square meter space almost, maybe like 10 to 20. And they've just got materials everywhere, drawing boards everywhere, tables. Not so much like machines or anything like that, but like they did a lot of like lighting designs and that testing and all of their tiles. They had like the iteration of all their tiles that they'd done over the years there. And then obviously just like your model making and traditional stuff, which is, pretty interesting. Just a good work environment.
Yeah, it sounds
kind of
like
mixed media, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the spaciousness that's quite different from a typical architectural studio. Yeah, just a generous surface area to work with.
And then, just a lot of natural light. And then he just had like a whole bunch of stuff going on with, what's their name? Artec, is it? Who did their manufactured all their furniture, which is also so interesting. Like, there's like IKEA ripoffs. That's the funny thing. That original, not even the original stuff, the proper stuff isn't actually plywood. It's actually solid timber, and it's just like slotted into one each,
strips.
Like, strips. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But then that's only to get forward to the bend, but then it goes solid timber again. So when you look at the original kind of chairs and whatnot that you can still buy today, the quality is and the craftsmanship is just like 10 times better than the IKEA ripoffs. And that was kind of like designed for, like there's some of it was designed for like the hospitals and that sort of thing, or like higher end stuff, right down to like the lay person who can, have some of those stools. But it was meant to be like relatively affordable, well designed, well crafted furniture. And then the lighting as well, which is pretty impressive. So that was definitely, the highlight of the trip.
Raimana, are you still making like all your furniture in-house, or are you getting to the point where some of that's getting outsourced?
For the furniture, it's mostly getting outsourced. The metalwork is. The woodworking part, that's semi-outsourced. So I'll do the laminations. I mean, it's very basic woodworking. I'll do the lamination in-house. And then I've got a friend who owns a CNC router. Send it to him, who I think he would have been perfect to include in this conversation. He's also his background is in architecture. Alistair Munro is his name. So he has a CNC and he just routes the laminated planks. Then comes back, I set it and set it off, then send it to the polishers. And then they spray it with polyurethane.
Awesome.
So I do that in-house, semi-in-house, and then the metalwork. I work with local manufacturers they're based in Henderson, and their workshop, it's very built for higher volume production. Then it's interesting to visit and see how they operate. versus a workshop like that's designed for bespoke pieces, like one-off elements. Very different models and the way they set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
more linear. Raimana, did you find that kind of liberating, starting to outsource? Because I think when I came and visited you, that was quite a few years ago now. But I think you had a jig for your stools, like the ones that are at Mr. Go's. I think you were just starting to like nail out how to weld those together as fast as you could.
yeah. Yes, it definitely was. I mean, it's always been a goal to get high volume orders and I'd be able to outsource the production. Because it's from a business point of view, it's viable. I want to say it's easy money.
Yeah.
If your margins are right, you hit the right markets, and you've got a product they like, then you just press play with the manufacturers and see you in a month.
Yeah.
It's definitely yeah.
And
But
they're professionals,
I'm still
so it comes back perfect every time. Well,
exactly.
Their level of finish is generally pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, way
Outsourcing
better
the
than.
pros.
Yeah. I'm like, they have way better than my welds.
Yeah, I feel like a fraud sometimes. Like, I do all this welding, but as soon as like an actual welder, I got a friend who works at a large industrial workshop in Porirua, and just him and the guys he works with, like their actual skills, their actual technical fabrication skills are just like moons ahead of where I will ever be. So
Yeah.
you're always like, like we can't kid ourselves. We're not like actual mega craftsmen. Like I'm a fraud in the industry, really. I'm using it as a design tool,
At least you're
or a
out there
play
doing
tool.
it, man.
Yeah,
Not a fraud at all.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. You're not at all. Because I was
but
thinking
these guys
exactly,
that do are amazing. Like it's incredible how good you can be if you're like welding all day.
I know. It's insane. Like how they're like, oh, if I do these stacks here, the steel is gonna move that way. It's pretty incredible. Their understanding of the material.
Yeah. Anyone can weld, but can you weld something square?
Yeah, it's like it's a whole other game.
That's why you've got hydroforming, Gerard. You don't have to worry about squares anymore.
Yeah. Genuinely makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Lovely to check craft.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Loving your
Thanks for
work.
having me.
Yeah.
Keep building cool stuff.
If you want to hang out at the workshop, come and visit.
I do. I'll be hitting you up as soon as I get home.
I mean, I don't want to set your expectation. It's a very small workshop.
No, that's fine.